Hey folks, Jim from Salvinos J R Models, and I've got something different for you. I have been asked to do a real short video on the use of the assembly jig for the next gen kits. So let's take a look at that, and we're going to go through a little bit of the assembly and a couple little tips and tricks on the chassis for the next gen kit. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a scrap yard of parts here on my desk. And I'm gonna show you how you use this and the jig. If you are interested in one of these jigs for the next gen assembly, it does make it a little easier. You don't have to have it, but it is a little more easy. Jim at salvino.us, and I will ship you one of these. I'll give you a price list when you send it in. So, real easy. The chassis snaps in. I didn't intend it that way, but the prints come out that nicely. Okay, that's going to snap in. But here we got a couple little things we want to tweak beforehand. Right here, there's a little bit of draft that was added by the factory. Not my fault. The factory did it. Just a little bit there. And we're going to go up here too. So they added a little bit of draft here on the front firewall. You just trim those off a little bit and try to not cut off a finger. Okay, so you're going to do those. You're not going to need those at the moment, but that will make your life easier when you get to that step. So see how that fits in really nice and neat. If you do it right out of the box, it's not quite right. So we've got that. We're also going to come to these leading edges where they drop into there on that firewall. Just give them a little scrape. They're a little tight. I designed this kit a little bit too tight. I've learned since then, and I've straightened out my act on the IndyCar. It fits better. I'm doing the backside on that one. Let's get there. And it'll help them to fit in a little bit better when you go to do those. Hey, I wanted to throw this in real quick. Don't throw away all of your used X-Acto blades. You can always go back and you can run these up against a grinder or your sander or whatever. Give it a square edge as you do. You can give yourself some round ends, some curves, or like here, you can actually take your abrasive cutoff for your Dremel tool and you can make a hook knife. And this, you can put that right into your styrene and you can cut a really nice little groove with that. That square edge, you can trim up all the sides of your parts, your seam lines, etc. You saw me using this in that previous section. So make these. They're going to be really handy tools. Real quick to make, very handy. And I've straightened out my act on the IndyCar. It fits better. I'm doing the backside on that one. Let's get there. And it'll help them to fit in a little bit better when you go to do those. One of the other tight spots is this little section that's all the way in the back. And what you need to do before you build it is you need to just go to these little triangles and just nip off just a little bit. Just, 20, 30 thousandths off there. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be exact back here on this. And what this is going to do is it's going to let these pieces that are in the back come closer together. That fits in there tighter. Without that, these have a tendency of being splayed a little bit, and you'll run into difficulties gluing them into this bottom truss. So before you start building those, and this may be like step one of the assembly process, is go back and trim these off. You got a couple good glue points on here, so if you trim too much of that off, it's not going to be a problem. Just glue those together, and then when you glue it to the truss, everything is going to hold in place. Now, Rick is an old school guy. He doesn't like using the liquids too much. I really like this Plastic Magic, primarily because it has a really nice sized brush that I can get plenty of the solvent in there. Rick is a big proponent of the old school Testors orange glue because it has a solvent, but it also has a filler. So use those. We do not recommend super glue on our kits, especially like on this one, because you have to glue things together tightly. So you can see I've got gaps in here. That doesn't matter right now. You can come back and glue those in a little bit if you want. But what this allows you to do right now is you can fit this into the truss as this needs to be to fit in. It's kind of hard to do that with where I'm not using my good building glasses, but you can glue them into the truss. And I'll come back in a minute and do the other side and show the assembly more. Okay, you see all that's put together, and this fits very nice and neatly into the back. That truss fits nice and neatly into the back firewall. I'll glue that up. The Tamiya Extra Thin is great also, but to me it needs a larger brush, and I just like these a little bit better. It's, you know, personal taste. Okay, now we get into dropping that into the chassis, dropping this into here. Be careful, you don't want to glue this onto the chassis right yet. I'm just putting enough glue to stick that in place. We'll drop those in there. And at the same time, we'll try to get the little pin that's in the bottom here. We'll get that set into the underwing, undertray, whatever we want to call that. I'm used to work on the Indy cars, and I call it the underwing. So we'll let that sit up. Alrighty. Alrighty. Is that going to fit on there right? It should. Okay, so now the last parts. And once again, you know what? As you're running into anything, if it seems like it's too snug, too tight, don't be afraid to scrape stuff off a little bit. Trim some of the little pins. Trim the ends of the pins off if they seem a little long. It's not. This is modeling. It is not perfect, and I will. Like I've said numerous times, I made this thing a little bit tighter than I'd like, but it is what it is. Just trim things off, scrape things down. It's not, nobody's going to die. This is not serious. You can get it close, and you'll live. So anyway, we got that. Glue this on here. Okay, so we get that on. Let that sit up a little bit. Fit it on there. And do I need to sand? Fits. Okay, all that to get to why you want this jig. Or, not just mine, but there's other guys that make them. Why these jigs are going to be so handy. It's easier to slightly pull it out of here. You know, fit these. Make sure that they fit like they need to. Because sometimes because sometimes you get a phone call right in the middle of doing what you're doing. So anyway, I've glued that lower front control arm on. That was Rick calling in with the Telltale Ferrari ringtone. So you'll put those on, and then see, it fits right in there. Drop the whole thing on. Yeah, it's a little snug, but that's what it's supposed to be like. And then you just push that suspension arm down so it sits on top of one of the little nubs here. This one sits down on that nub there. And then you let it sit. It's easier to glue it into here first than it is to have this in here and put it in, just because that's nice and snug. But go ahead and put those on and then let it sit. Back end also. Let's see, we'll put a little of our secret sauce here. And you don't have to use just Plastic Magic. That's just one I'm using, and I like it. I do, as I've said, I do prefer using the liquid over the testers, but that's what Rick likes to use. And as I've been saying over and over and over and over to anybody that'll listen, don't use super glue. These are styrene plastic models. Build them with the proper stuff. That's just the right way to do it. Okay, see the back lower A-arm, it just fits in and it just sits right on that ledge. And that's exactly where you want to do it. So do that on both sides, guys. Then you can come back and you can add in your upper control arms and your shocks and stuff like that. But that's how you use this assembly jig. And like I said, there's other guys doing them too. They don't snap in like mine does, but they do have the ride heights set where the ride heights need to be. If you're interested in one of mine, Jim at salvino.us. And I also have some other printed parts for these and some of the other things that we do. So there you go. Hope that one helps.